We're live and I'm ready for it this week. I'm so impressed with myself. So hi everyone, my name's Claire Kennedy. Welcome to our Kennedy Street live chat and our recovery talks, which we have every Wednesday at 12 noon till 1 o'clock. And each week we invite fabulous guest speakers to come. The reason why we invite people to come and have a chat with us is because since the pandemic, what's emerged for us as a charity, well, first of all, we've become a registered charity a week before lockdown, for those of you who don't know what we do, and which could not have come at a better time. And then since the pandemic, what's emerged for us as a charity is a national recovery helpline where people reach out to us and ask for help, basically. And it can be a multitude of different things that they're struggling with. Most of the people that have been ringing have been functioning alcoholic addicts. So they've still got jobs, they've still got families, they're still in the family home. Most of them have got are in work. So, and they're just really struggling. It's really, really affected a lot of people in a lot of ways in this pandemic. And what we try and do at Kennedy Street is just offer that connection and give people a starting point. Often people don't know where to start. So that's why we do these talks, because we were so inundated with calls that we couldn't take as many calls as we needed to take. So we decided to do these talks, which we could stream live on Facebook and on YouTube. So yeah, that's why we're here. We're here to serve and we're here to spread a message of hope. And we've got some fabulous guest speakers today. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce my stunningly gorgeous husband, who will then introduce our guest speakers. So over to you, gorgeous husband.
Hello, everybody. You're very welcome today. I hope you're feeling okay during this pandemic 2 or lockdown 2. Today, we've got the lovely Annette and Matt, who are from GamCare, which is a gambling charity. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to take too much away from my guests. So I will just hand over to the lovely Annette. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kev, and thank you very much, Claire, for having us along today. It's a real pleasure. My name is Annette. As Kev said, I work for a charity called GamCare, and I'm a training and engagement lead for the women's programme because we have a number of different programmes that we work with within GamCare. Many of you may have heard of GamCare before, I'm not sure, but we're the leading national provider of support, help and advice for people who suffer from gambling-related harms. So that's not just the gambler themselves, but also the affected other as well. And I'm here today with my lovely colleague, Matt, who works on our youth programme as well. And I'll hand you over to him as he's going to introduce himself. There's nothing better than lived experience, and Matt will be actually talking you through very kindly through his story and his experience. And then we'll be able to come back and talk about what help and advice is available within the community, which you can reach out to, what our roles entail, to ensure that we can reach out and help as many people as we possibly can. So thanks very much, guys, and over to you, Matt.
Cool, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, my name is Matt Burgiss. I'm an education and training lead at GamCare. So I work specifically on the youth programme, which is really about offering preventative education to young people around the subject of gambling, as well as training to any professionals, so any frontline professionals that may be working with young people. We're a non-judgmental organisation, so we don't go into schools and talk to young people and say things like, you know, gambling's bad and you shouldn't do it. Actually, we really pride ourselves on having those honest kind of conversations about what gambling is and you know, how it can be done in a much safer way and how it can be done in a dangerous way, and actually what those impacts might be if that happens, and where they can obviously go and get help as well.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Matt. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about your experience, if that's okay, and sort of how you came to sat here, you know, and working for GamCare as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So I started gambling probably I was about 16, 17, you know, it's just your general kind of buying scratch cards, you know, going into the bookies, placing bets on football matches and things of interest, you know. At that point, it was still very much a kind of social gambling, you know, very little amounts of money. I went to university at 18 and I did a course in performing arts. And, you know, very much fell into a culture of people, you know, I had some very good friends there. We would play football at the weekend, go to the pub, you know, a few doors down was a bookies. We'd go in there, play some bets. And as going into that kind of environment, I started to notice what we call fixed odds betting terminals. So these are machines that you can find in bookmakers where you can play things like virtual roulette, virtual blackjack, all those kind of games. So I started to, you know, put a bit of money in them. And over that kind of year or two, the first sort of year or two of university, I started to notice that actually I was probably playing and gambling with a little bit more money than the average person, especially for a student who, you know, if you've been a student, you'll know you won't have lots of money at your disposal. So yeah, I kind of was putting a lot of money in them. I guess sort of halfway through my university experience, I kind of started to think potentially, you know, this is becoming a little bit of a problem. Kind of ignored it. Didn't really want to face it. Didn't really want to have to tell people about it. It was towards the end of my third year, actually, as I left university, that I discovered online gambling. So, you know, the idea that you can go onto an online bookmaker and go onto their live casino feature and literally have a person stood at a blackjack table, you know, dealing real cards in real time. And that was when I started to spend, you know, quite large amounts of money. I guess at that time, I kind of thought that once I left uni, I'd probably, you know, stop. I think, you know, there were times where I won and actually that money helped me through the next kind of couple of weeks. And obviously there were a lot of losses as well. But I definitely thought, you know, once I'm in a job and I'm earning money, you know, this will kind of go away. I won't really need it. I was quite lucky when I left university. I got an agent within like 3 or 4 weeks and then went into the world of like professional performing. Did some, you know, pretty cool jobs, a lot of like tours around the UK, did some work over in Spain as well, which was great. But one thing I noticed was that once I left university, I was still gambling. And there were times where I was working and I would be gambling in any kind of break that I had. And there'd be times where I was out of work and that kind of boredom really set in. And, you know, I would gamble online for many hours. In fact, at the height of that problem, I was probably gambling for like 15, 16 hours a day, you know, sitting either in my room or on my phone and on a laptop, you know, online, mostly through the day. I was living at home at the time, but while parents were at work. And then on the night time, I'd go to bed, sort of pretend to go to sleep and then, you know, gamble through the night as well. And that really went on again for another kind of 2 years. What I really didn't realize at the time was that the gambling was causing a lot of underlying depression as well, I think. And it was really unnoticed. So it went on and on. The gambling got worse and worse. I think at the height of my problem, like I said, I was gambling for 15, 16 hours a day, and I was depositing, you know, thousands of pounds a day, you know, and spending that money. So it became really, really difficult to manage. I got to the point where even on nights out with friends, I would find an excuse to leave a nightclub or to go to a club toilet and sit in there gambling. You know, so it was really difficult, and I didn't feel very good about myself at all. It all kind of came to a head on the 26th of February 2016. It was. I had been on a very long gambling session, just sort of in my room. You know, that went through the night, and in the middle of the night, I ended up gambling pretty much all of my savings, which, you know, I just finished quite a good job. It was quite a lot of money, and I gambled all of it and lost it, and panicked. So I took out the biggest overdraft I could on my bank account, and I placed all of that, and I lost that very, very quickly as well. So I went to bed that night, you know, feeling obviously very down. I woke up the next morning and didn't really have a penny to my name. Looking back, that was the point where I probably should have gone and got some help, or definitely should have gone and got some help. But, you know, I told a lot of lies to friends and family. You know, there was definitely a stigma and a shame that was around the kind of the problem itself. So unfortunately, I made a really bad decision. I ended up driving to my local town centre. I went to the top of a 6-storey car park and I jumped off it and made a really, really serious attempt on my life. Obviously, very luckily survived it. And even more lucky that I'm still mobile today. I'm still able to walk and do a lot of things. But, I did do a lot of damage. I ended up breaking every bone in like my right and left foot. I crushed my pelvis. I broke 3 vertebrae in my back. Broke quite a lot of my ribs. Broke my wrists. Damaged nerves in my head. I did pretty much every bit of damage you can do to your body. And it was only really, I spent 3 weeks in a coma, and then a good sort of 3 or 4 months in hospital. And it was only really that time in hospital, and actually the lie had been revealed to my family, that I was able to talk to them and really explain what had been going on and start to recover. I was extremely lucky, firstly, to survive, but also to have that support network around me. And I know my parents are probably watching this, so I'll always say thank you to them, because they were amazing through the whole thing. Just to be able to kind of come clean and speak about it and have their support really helped me recover. And that was nearly 5 years ago now. I haven't gambled since, and yeah, I feel like I'm in a very, very different place in my life. I actually look back at that experience now as myself being a completely different person. I didn't really take into consideration anyone else's feelings, because that is part of the problem. But now, I feel like I'm on a very different journey, and it's it feels good. One of the things that we, one of the reasons I like to tell that story and kind of link it back to the work that we do at GamCare is I am extremely lucky to have that support network around me. And we really recognise at GamCare that not everyone has that, and that it might be really difficult for someone to kind of come clean to a family member or to a trusted friend. So that's why our support services are so important, because if you're in that situation and you are able to just make a phone call to the National Gambling Helpline or speak to someone at GamCare, then that is really the start of a recovery journey, and that's really the hardest bit in a sense.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you so much for your honesty. I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry and I'm sad that it took you to those lengths. It must have been horrendous for your parents. It must have been horrendous for you, obviously, to have gone to have felt that was the only way out, really. And that's what really struck me is, and not just with your story, but other stories that I've heard as well, is it really does take a lot from people, and the suicide rates are phenomenally high. I'm sure Annette will tell us a little bit more about that. So I'm really grateful for you coming on this show today, and I'm more than grateful for you surviving to be able to tell us this, your story and share it with us. And I'm sure there's lots of people who will be, impacted by your honesty. I've got loads of questions, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to save my questions until we've heard a little bit more from Annette, if that's okay. Because what I'd like to do at the back of you sharing your story is just find out if there is anybody out there, Annette, and they're at this point, or yourself, Matt. Either of you can come in on this. Where would people start? Obviously, pick up the phone, but how would you then be able to support them?
Yeah, Matt, are you happy for me to just lead on this?
Yeah,
thanks a lot, Matt, for sharing that, because I know that was a really big step for you today. So we really appreciate that. Thanks very much indeed. It is really important. A couple of things that Matt said, about the shame, the guilt, the sadness that he got to that point where he felt that, the only way out really would be to try and jump off that car park and that sort of thing. It's really important that we work and educate and raise awareness around gambling and gambling-related harm, so that early intervention does with a lot of addictions. If we can get that early intervention and that understanding from professionals, individuals, community leaders, anybody that's working with individuals and talking to people, to understand the indicators that it might possibly be gambling or there may be an issue there, what can I do? Where can I reach out to help and signpost this individual to? So like you said, the National Gambling Helpline, which is a free phone number. It's an 0808 number. It's open 365 days of the year, 24/7. And there's trained advisors on the end of that line who will be able to triage people, give them the help and support that's needed, and obviously help them along their treatment pathway, whatever that may look like. One of the key things that we do in our training as well is upskill people to understand gambling, because it's very much a hidden harm, like Matt has talked about the fact that, and the way we gamble nowadays has changed massively. If you've got a laptop, an iPad, a smartphone, you've got a casino in your room 24 hours a day if you want it. So it's really important to try and look at those indicators and get that early intervention and talk about it. The main thing is to be able to talk about, have that open conversation. So when we train and work with professionals, services, community leaders, we talk about what's called a trigger question. That's quite a corporate way of saying, but it's a gambling question that talks to the individual. And it's not just about the gambler, because gambling affects so many others as well. So it's about giving the help and support to what we call affected others, which is loved ones, family members, people at work colleagues, whatever they, whoever they may be, to ensure that they get help and support as well. So having that open conversation, how was your relationship with gambling, or have you been affected by somebody else's gambling? And if that question is yes, the answer is yes, there's help and support available. If it's not, you've sown the seed, you may be a safe space for somebody to come back to and say, hey, you know what, Claire, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I have actually thought about it and I want to speak to you about it now. So as we know, that open conversation is really, really key about such a complex issue. We have other referral pathways as well, because not everybody wants to pick up the phone and call the National Gambling Helpline. And especially in lockdown, people may not feel safe to be able to do that. With the shame and isolation that this can bring with such a complex issue, it's important that they can reach out in other ways. So there are web chats, there are chat rooms, which are peer-led, which you can find on the GamCare website, and you can gain access. They're safe spaces for people to be able to explain what they're going through, share their experience, and speak to people who are going through the same, which I hope you'll agree is really, really important. Lived experience and people who are experts by experience will drive our services, our support services, and all of our programs forward 100%. So also we all work with our lovely treatment partner called Breakeven, who have actually, I know Ian and Neil have actually been on the show as well, and we can do direct referrals through into Breakeven as well. And I can see that their details are coming along the screen at the moment, which is really good. So there is huge help and support out there, but it is about making sure that we, in the roles that we do, raise that awareness. And that's why I'm so thankful that you're having us on the program today, because a lot of people will know where to go for drug and alcohol support, but not necessarily for gambling. And we're certainly seeing an increase specifically in women and women with gambling related disorders or gambling related harms increasing. And we want to ensure that people obviously know about where they can go, what help and support is available, not just the gambler, but the affected other as well. Matt, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've covered a lot of it there really well, and that it's about having, like I said before, those non-judgmental services that are there for people. My story is one of those things. It's not unique in a sense, because many people have been through the same thing. But we want people to really understand that the services are there for leading up to that point as well. There are sometimes people do phone the National Gambling Helpline and say, look, I'm just a bit worried because I'm spending a little bit more than I usually would of a weekend. And that's really positive, because actually the earlier we can kind of capture a problem, usually, the easier it is to be able to overcome that, or to help someone not overcome that. With our youth services, we're really about that preventative side. But also we do have a net line which they can access, which is on the Big Deal website, which is bigdeal.org.uk. I think that's going to come across the bottom as well. So this is a program specifically for young people. A lot of people always question, well, why do we have services for young people when they're not even legally allowed to gamble? But the Gambling Commission's most recent kind of survey of young people shows that there's an estimated around 55,000 young people that are already experiencing problems with gambling. So again, the earlier we can have that intervention, the better. And actually, if they don't have a problem, great. But we can give them that education to ensure that they carry on through life without experiencing any problems, and they have the correct information as well.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Early intervention for me is critical. The earlier we can, and ultimately, this, Matt and Annette, I'm sure you've seen it. Kev and I have both got that lived experience, so we know that nobody can do this for us. And ultimately, it is about planting seeds of hope. And I think, the work that we're doing is giving those people those opportunities to hear. And the earlier we can plant those seeds, the better. So, Kev, have you got any questions?
Well, first off, I'd just like to say thank you to Matt for having the courage to actually tell that story and tell that story on air, so to speak. And it certainly brings home just where this particular, any addiction can take you, but this one, I always feel that gambling's a bit hidden. It seems to be a bit different from other addictions. Almost it's nastier to a certain extent, I think, but that's just my opinion. And I'd like to know, you were talking about younger people. We see, when I was a kid, the bookies was, maybe because I'm 104, but the bookies was somewhat, it didn't bother me. I mean, I'm a man of many vices. I was a man of many vices, but gambling wasn't one of them. So, but I think now, because of scratch cards and things like that, can I ask you, what do you think the government can do? What can the government do more to bring awareness and to help people? And do you feel that more young people are getting involved? And is this pandemic, I should imagine, has tripled, maybe quadrupled your calls because people are short of money and they fall into that trap?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying that, Kev, you don't look a day over 30, so you're not 104, don't worry. But no, yeah.
Once an actor, always an actor, Matt. Yeah.
You get away there.
Yeah, you can't fool me, pal.
No, yeah, I think it's an interesting question. And, I have to separate my personal beliefs from GamCare's. GamCare take a very, like I say, non-judgmental view. But we do align in the sense that, it's not just about the government changing rules and laws, okay? It's about social responsibility. That's why I'm really proud to work for GamCare, because we work with all different areas. We do work directly with the industry and train some of their kind of call center staff, to make sure they're keeping customers safe, or to help them keep customers safe. But it is, we talk to them a lot about social responsibility, especially when we talk about things like advertising. Now, gambling companies should not, should be allowed to advertise like any other company. But we kind of urge them to think about, what is socially responsible in terms of advertising. Is having 10 adverts in a 1 hour slot responsible? Maybe not, who knows? So, it's just really getting people to think about, yes, they're a business, and yes, they should be allowed to operate in the same way any other business does. But actually, customer safety and just generally people safety should be at the heart of everything we do. I think the government are really looking at this now. There's talks in the House of Lords about potentially the lottery age, because obviously 16 to do the lottery is potentially going to rise to 18 at some point this year. We don't know if that's definitely going to happen, but I think that's a step in the right direction, just having a kind of flat age of 18 for all gambling. But I think I try not to focus too much on what the government can do. I think I look at myself as an individual and and other people, and actually what can we do to help keep people safe.
And I just wondered if, Kev, I could just add to that about sort of like talking about the advertising a little bit, because we hear from women, and I can talk from, case studies that I've done with women, training, where people have shared their experiences and things like that. And they have certainly said that, advertising has been a trigger for them. You're going to be hard pushed to watch daytime TV without seeing an advert that comes on, you know, for online gambling. And, you know, traditionally we don't have to go and get the tenner and go down to the bookies anymore or anything like that. You know, if you're feeling a bit isolated, a bit on your own, you want a little bit of something for yourself. You know, our service users have told us that they have joined like online communities, and gambling has come as a secondary sort of thing, because I think as human beings we all feel a sense of wanting to belong to something. You know, so we do hear obviously for the impact around advertising, but Matt's, you know, very, very true in what you've said, and I believe you and Claire will say, you know, it is down to individuals' responsibilities also to be able to do that. But if there is signs and problems and, you know, gambling disorders or gambling related harm, there is also help and hope. And that's something that I really want to get across obviously today in this session. And GamCare have launched a new pilot called Talk Ban Stop, which is through the National Gambling Helpline. And you can speak to somebody on the National Gambling Helpline to start this process along. And basically we're working with GamStop and GamBan, and GamStop stops the person. So you can give all your aliases, all your names, all of yours, Kev, you can put Curly down, all that sort of thing. And they will be able to actually stop that, you actually accessing online gambling. And GamBan is about your devices, and I think you can register up to 15 devices. I'm not 100% sure, but a number of devices to be able to stop using those devices to access gambling websites. So in the past, that's been something that people have had to pay for. It's currently free, so that is available. And also the financial industry are doing a lot of work around the banks. GamCare are working with them around stopping, because a lot of people have said, why didn't the bank stop me to a certain degree? You know, they see these transactions. So there is help advice there through the banks if you ask for it.
As an actor, I've been down the country like yourself, Matt, and I sometimes use casinos, not for gambling, because there's cheap food in there. As an actor, you know, so that's very handy, and they show the football games, which sometimes you can't get on normal TV, and I find that, and those places are like palaces. Right, so and they're amazing, and I see no problem with that. That's their stuff. But from what you've been telling me, it seems to become more secretive with the devices, and I may be wrong here, but I think when it gets secretive on your phone or on your computer, that's the isolation of it. Are big tech getting involved in this and kind of trying to ban certain betting apps or things like that? And as I said, is there a massive amount of younger people coming into the gambling arena? Because I remember when like ladies of a certain age would just disappear every Tuesday night to bingo, and he never struck me as a kind of a habit, a bad habit. You know, at least I'm going off to bingo. So is it more young women and young girls getting involved in it? And as I said, you know, what are the big tech companies trying to do about it?
Matt, do you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, there's loads of different things that are kind of happening. I guess the main kind of ones, as Annette spoke about, is the kind of what they call blocking software. So you can download software that will, you know, stop you from accessing any kind of gambling related site. And some of them also block emails, like advertising emails that might come to your account as well. I know there was a time where people were saying it's great for blocking websites, but I'm still receiving all these free offers and all these free bets, and actually that's enticing me back in. So they are working, well, they have already worked that into their kind of, you know, their software. So you shouldn't be, people that sign up won't be receiving that. I know there's talk, you know, this is only from news that I've seen. So, you know, there's talk of like social media sites potentially being able to then block it for under 18s. So it's a bit more targeted, you know, because that is obviously a risk when a young person signs up to social media or even plays the kind of what we call freemium games. So things like Candy Crush, where you don't have to pay to download them. They're usually riddled with adverts. That's how they make their money. But it's ensuring that those adverts are suitable for the person that's actually using them. Going back to your question about kind of isolation, yeah, I definitely agree. I think, you know, to do it publicly in a casino is one thing, but to do it at 3 o'clock in the morning, sat in bed, is very, very different. And when we do our training, I always talk to people about the kind of hidden side of it. And I always pose the question, like, how many times have you been sat on public transport and seen someone on their phone or on an iPad? Now, actually, we can't see what they're doing, but how many times have you actually thought, I wonder what they are actually doing? Now, that's not to say that we should go and ask them, you know, it's not any of our business, but actually it just proves that we don't actually know what people are doing on these devices, and that's why it's so easy to hide. You know, if someone is getting drunk all the time or is taking drugs all the time, it's likely you're going to see some sort of physical impact from that, you know, especially if you see them on a day-to-day basis. Whereas gambling, you know, there were times where I was extremely tired because I've been gambling all night, but aside from that, there wasn't really many physical impacts. I knew that I'd kind of spun this huge web of lies over a long period of time. So I wasn't, you know, I didn't let myself be really angry when I lost lots of money, because I knew then people would start to question why that was. So yeah, it can be very, very hidden and very isolating.
So what parents, for example, what should they be looking for in their children if they feel that there's a problem with gambling, specifically gambling? What should they look for?
Well, so there's a number of kind of risk factors and impacts to kind of consider. If you're talking, you know, about devices, obviously there are a lot of parental controls you can put on devices now. Okay, you know, there's a lot, even with things like Xboxes and PlayStations. You know, anything that can access the internet, usually you can put a parental control on. So I definitely urge parents to start to research. Okay, what are these parental controls? How can I use them to my advantage to keep, you know, my child safe? But, you know, if a young person is struggling with gambling, we're likely to see, you know, that their schoolwork will decline, or they might even start to become really truant from school. Sometimes they pair that with what we call other risky behaviors. So they might pair that with alcohol abuse, drug abuse. You know, it's really looking at a young person and what risky behaviors are they taking? Are they getting enjoyment from those risky behaviors? We talk about young people experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and even sexually as well. You know, if you've got a young person that you know is getting some enjoyment from that, then that should definitely be a red flag. You know, they might also turn to things like antisocial behavior and crime. That can be as a way of just kind of lashing out and let that emotion out. Or the crime side of things, you know, we know that young people on the whole don't have access to huge amounts of money, but to gamble, you usually need, you know, a fair bit of money. So they might turn to some sort of crime. You know, there's a lot of instances where young people and adults, you know, have got themselves into a bit of debt by gambling and felt like the only way to kind of lose that debt is to go and rob someone, or, you know, to start dealing drugs and things like that. So there are a number of things you can look out for like that. But really, it's about pieces of the puzzle. It's about, you know, one side might be a little red flag and then another little red flag a bit later on, and actually putting all those things together.
Okay, and Annette, can you talk me through the process? Someone who may be listening to this who realise they may have a gambling problem, and they decide to take that first step, that very first brave step to reach out and ask for help. Can you talk me through the process of we make the phone call to you, and what happens then?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so obviously the phone call comes in through to the National Gambling Helpline, or you can gain that support through the web chat and the web forums as well. So there's a number of different ways we can do that. And there are trained advisors on the end of the line who will speak to the individual about what the concerns are. We have parents, just linking into what you were, you know, talking about just now, Matt. You know, we also have parents that call up concerned about their children as well, and behavioural changes in their children that they're seeing. You know, a child that might be quite tolerant at normal times, and if you try to take their laptop away from them, has a complete meltdown and, you know, changes completely. So those trained advisors will be able to offer help and support in regards to what is required for the individual. Obviously, it's a very individual process, so we need to find out what's happening in regards to not just the gambling. There may be a comorbidity with another addiction that may be running alongside, so there may need to be a multi-agency approach. But what would happen specifically in this area, because I know we're kind of talking about the South Coast as well, is that a referral can then go through to our treatment partner Breakeven. If it's treatment that is required that Breakeven can provide. GamCare also provide what's called a program called Game Change, which is a computerized CBT program. It's 8 modules which people can do in their own time. So that's cognitive behavioral therapy program, changing your behavior and your relationship towards gambling. You will have a trained practitioner who will work with you to go through those 8 modules. You can do it in your own time, so you don't need to turn up at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon for a face-to-face meeting. It can be done privately so that you can do it anonymously if you want to keep it away from loved ones, if you haven't disclosed yet that you're there. And it really is the treatment plan, and the care plan is really molded around the individual and what they require at that stage, because it may be that they're perhaps in a social gambling situation, maybe thinking that they're moving towards problem gambling, but they just need that brief intervention and advice to help them to stay perhaps in social gambling within those safe parameters, rather than it becoming more of a severe problem.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Oh,
I just also wanted to mention as well, Kev, because you talked about the pandemic. And I just wanted to pick up on your comments around the pandemic as well. And the Gambling Commission have released figures to say that there has been an increase in people gaming and gambling online during 2019, 2020. So I do, in my personal opinion, and what I hear and pick up from when I do my training and speak to professionals, especially mental health professionals, are seeing a lot more people coming through with gambling related issues. Whilst we've been going through this difficult period that we went through last year and into this year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had a lot of calls, particularly from ladies and people that are at work. So ladies that are at work, that are at home in lockdown, on devices, and they're gambling whilst working. And it's massively problematic, and I know that goes on when we're back in the community too. I know I've had a lot of clients in the past who have been gambling at work, and they've been found to be gambling at work, and that's really what's brought about a moment of clarity for them. One question that I wanted to ask you, and because I'm personally really passionate about family recovery, and whilst the focus is often very much on the person with the issue, be that gambling, drinking, or whatever the problem is, not much emphasis is put on the family and what they can do. So, for instance, I had a lady call, and it relates back to what Matt was just talking about, and crimes committed, and this mom had a credit card stolen by her child who'd got the gambling issue. I mean, they had got a comorbidity as well, and they got a drug addiction as well. And she discovered that the child had stolen a credit card and racked up a bill of, I think, something like £6,000. So what sort of guidance, I know what sort of guidance I'd give, but what sort of guidance would you give to that mum? Because often family members don't know where to start, and they might bail their child out, which often happens. So can you tell us a little bit more about coping strategies for parents and how best to deal with addiction in the home?
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right in regards to that bailout as well. We often see that within gambling, very much so, because some people feel that if they don't do it, then somebody will sadly take a further step, and they don't want that to happen. And there's that normal parental feeling around that side of things. So again, that would be guidance towards the National Gambling Helpline, if that's what they need, because they need the help and support as an affected other as well, rightly so. It's like you say, it's not just focused around the person with the gambling disorder. So there is obviously help and support for people through the trained practitioners, through GamCare as well. But for me, it's about having that open and honest conversation. So many people that I speak to that talk to me about their experiences say they didn't know, they had no idea. they wish that they had had that open conversation. They'd wish they'd brought it forward. They wish they'd talked about it. And that's why I touched on, talking about that gambling related question as well, is having that conversation with people to actually say, is there a problem, sometimes can bring forward, people find it really personal. So, it's a really difficult place to be at. But if you feel confident that you can have those open conversations, do bring it forward. Don't heap the shame and guilt on people. Don't you realize that we're not going to be able to pay for our grandchildren's graduation, or, whatever it is, that person's already feeling pretty low as it is, so have that open conversation with support. So perhaps get yourself aware of where you can be and what support that you can have, and acknowledge the fact that you need that help and support as well, and reach out for that to ensure that you can, because it is available, and a lot of people are affected by individuals gambling. So that first step really is that open and honest conversation, but reaching out to the professionals who can provide that support for you as a family member and as an affected other.
Yeah. Absolutely, completely agree. And I would always say that to family members. I would say seek support for yourself first, because often what we do as family members is we think we're trying to help, and what happens, because we're drawn into the illness, the condition, whatever you want to call it, the behaviours as well. And what we try and do is we act out dysfunctionally also. So I would say always for family members, if anybody's got any questions they want to ask, for me personally, it was about changing my narrative and about me learning about myself and my coping strategies, or my lack of coping strategies, and taking ownership for my own. I'm talking as a family member now. There was so many changes I had to make to me, which I didn't actually think I was the one with the problem. And that often is the case. It's like, well, I haven't got the problem, they've got the problem.
Yeah. And I think we hear a lot about people that suffer from what we call emotional neglect. They put their emotions aside because they feel that they need to deal with that individual, but actually they're just as important. We're currently running actually a survey through the women's program for women and young females who have been through treatment and support, and who are affected by gambling or affected others, affected by other people's gambling. And we did it last year as well in the women's program. And 100% of those people that returned their responses to that survey said that their mental health had been affected, whether they were the affected other, the loved one, the family member, or the gambler themselves. I hope if we can reach out to some of the people that are watching this today, to give us that feedback as well on that survey. It's a Survey Monkey, it's anonymous, it's very straightforward. We can hopefully change and look at the ways that we are providing support. And one thing, Claire, I'm really passionate about is we have a lot of barriers, and we need to break those barriers down to ensure that we are providing support. We're reaching out into the best way that we possibly can, so that people do come forward and get that help that they so rightly deserve.
Absolutely, wholeheartedly agree. And so if there's any ladies watching, do you want to give us a little bit more information on what support specifically you can offer to women? Obviously, I want to encourage people to fill in your questionnaire. I think that's really important for your benefits. But if there are any ladies watching that really just want to start this process, how would they go about starting this new path?
What we have actually found that has been very popular with women through the women's program, and the feedback that we've had, has been the web chats, because you can just type your messaging, you can just reach out. If you go onto the GamCare website, you can actually see those live web chats. So you can reach out almost anonymously. You can do it on your phone, so it can be a way of being able to do it, which is, a bit more discreet perhaps than being online. Reach out, just say the experience that you're going through at the moment. We do have themed forums as well, So that means that people can come on to those forums, which are specifically women-only forums. You'll have to check the website again for when they run, because it's not something that I'm involved in day to day. And they will be able to, they are peer-led again. We have a peer support group as well that GamCare, a peer aid group that GamCare have. Again, all the details are available on the website. So if you are wanting to take that first step, that's some of the referral pathways that are available. Also, you can contact Breakeven directly, who are our treatment partners, who are absolutely brilliant service that provide really, really quick consultations and fantastic treatment pathways. So I would wholeheartedly recommend that as well. And you can self-refer, or if you want somebody to support you, have a friend, a family, colleague, you know, something like that, you know, speak about it, come forward, make that small step. Even if you just go look, see, have a look and come away, you know, do please have a look and see what is available for you.
Amazing. And gosh, we could do at least 2 hours on this subject alone. So, you know, I'd love for you to come back at some point and maybe talk a little bit more. Kev, have you got any other questions that you want to ask?
Not really. I just want to say thank you very much, because this is, I think, is another epidemic, I think. And as Matt said, you know, with drugs and alcohol, there's a physical signs, a physical impact that you can see. But I do think this is such a hidden addiction and devastating. I feel. So I just want to say thank you very much for coming on today, and I hope people have out there have got something from this, and I hope people will be in touch with you.
Yeah, honestly, we really appreciate you coming on, and the wisdom that you've brought. And, you know, for anybody who's watching, who's struggling, you know, I know that Breakeven have been on the show, and I know that they have a really quick turnaround in call responses, which is really important. You know, in some areas, we've had calls from all over the country, people seeking help, and we try to connect them to the resources in their community. And in some areas, there's like up to 3 months waiting for, not for gambling addiction, but for other addictions. And the wait times are phenomenal, you know. So if you've got any problems, or if you've got any, if this is, you know, part of light bulb, about a light bulb moment, you know, you can reach out directly to GamCare. If you want to start a conversation and you need some additional support to take those next steps, you can give us a ring. You know, all of our helpline operators are all highly trained. They're all in recovery themselves. We have a variety of different people recovering from lots of different addictions and addictive behaviours. And there are lots of free resources out there as well. You know, I mean, we often scroll Gamblers Anonymous and Gam-Anon, which is for family members. And what I would say is, you know, if you've got any doubt, just start somewhere, you know. And like you said, Annette, it all starts with a conversation, doesn't it? You know, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would echo everything that you have said. And also, just to reiterate, all the GamCare resources are free as well. So there's no cost to any of that support that's available, which is brilliant. The training that both Matt and I provide through the women's program and through the youth program is all free of charge as well. And so that is available to raise that awareness within the communities. There is help and support within your community. My background has historically been in homelessness and mental health. So I've dealt with people who have been going through drug and alcohol addiction. And I completely agree, until I started to work with gambling, I had never seen that there could be such a quick turnaround in regards to support and help through the services, you know, rather than having that long waiting time for, you know, that help and support, which is really key to get that early intervention. So please, you know, do reach out. And also, Matt and I have provided our email addresses. Should you wish to contact us directly, we'd be more than happy to you know, to follow up on this. This isn't just a one-stop, here we are and off we go. This is very much something that we are very involved in and very committed to.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate your willingness to, because it is about personal connection as well, you know, and people might have connected with what you've said. We've had some lovely comments as well. We've got Sue saying, well done for raising awareness. Proud of you, Matt. You know, we have a really, you're right, gambling, from Karen, you're right, gambling really is a hidden addiction. I support people in addiction with money management issues, and this brings home that there are other addictions beyond alcohol and drugs which can also be harmful. Well done for raising the awareness. We've had some really, really good. There's another one here from Merrill. Our Pact is a brilliant parental control for young people's devices. Brilliantly said, Matt. There's a lot of love there for you, Matt. And I think, you know what, I'd just like to say thank you both, really. I mean, I'd love for you to come back. I'd love for you to talk about, because I know that you do workplace training as well. You know, I'm passionate about workplace training. So I think the more early intervention work that we can do, the better. So I'd love for you to come back and talk about that. But I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you both so much for some hope.
Thank you to you as well. Like, you know, we talk about gambling being a hidden addiction or hidden problem, and it's not until people start doing things like this and we can actually talk about it a bit more, and people come forward about it. And I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but it genuinely does save people's lives. So thank you for having us on. And yeah, if anyone out there does need any help, please do get in touch. We'd be more than happy to work with them.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you both. And sending you on your way to the rest of the week with lots of love. And thanks again. Yeah, come back and see us.
Thank you very much for having us. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you. See you next week. Bye. Bye.